There have been 235 D1 hires at 204 different institutions across Division One since 2020. At least that's the data that I found. So since I started the doctorate program, I started tracking athletic director changes at the D1 level so that I could kind of build up this profile. I knew I'd probably either use it for research or I'd use it for higher ed athletics. Well, I recently did an article and I'm turning it into more of an ongoing tracker on my website, higheredathletics.com, so that I can just update this as changes happen. Now, it's not all the data. I track a lot more information, but I wanted to at least put this out there because I do think the trends can really help people. Now, there's more layers to it, which in the future I might share, but a lot of it I just want to keep it either for research purposes or future searches that maybe I can help with search firms and in whatever higher ed athletics direction goes. But I at least wanted to share some stuff on here, and so you can see it on my website. And at the top of the website, I've put the updated date link so that or comment so that you will know if it's reflecting the most recent search. So my goal is now it should be pretty easy to maintain my database, and so then I just need to go in and update the article for the tracker. And I wanted to kind of just share some things that I'm seeing. Now, I did not, the question that's going to get asked most, and this is still something I'm tracking and looking into, is everybody wants to know what area athletic directors come from. Is it, legal background? Is it revenue generation? Well, I think everyone can pretty much assume that now it is going to be revenue generation. So I thought about waiting until I finished collecting all the backgrounds before I put the article and the tracker out. But instead, I just decided to just go ahead and put it out. So I don't have it broken down by your category. I was always curious about titles. And so the most common pathways to these current D1 athletic director hires in the last 5 years has been deputy AD, a sitting AD, or a senior associate AD. Now that doesn't sound surprising, right? Well, the numbers, it hasn't been that long since I feel like deputy became so standardized. Maybe I'm wrong. But 78 of the hires were deputy, 68 were sitting, and then 30 senior associate AD. That represents 176 of the hires, or just under 75% of the total AD hires in Division One in the last 5 years. So some key observations I put on there. 64 total internal promotions to the AD chair since 2020, and that's 27% of the hires came from that internal promotion side. A lot of them were females, and a lot of them were really the FCS or the non-football level. And while it seems like it happens a lot more lately, only 13 sitting athletic directors have left their position voluntarily to become a deputy AD since 2020. 10 of those were to the power schools. Two have now returned to AD positions, and that'd be Dr. Ed Scott at Memphis and Tommy McClellan at Rice. And then Diana Sabo, her move from Utah State to Maryland earlier in July was the most recent to take this path. We did see she probably either doubled or tripled her salary by doing so and got her back to the Big Ten. But not a lot of people, it just seems like more have been doing that. Now, maybe it becomes a trend in the future, so it's one of those things that'll be interesting to look at. FCS athletic directors rarely move into FBS or a power school, and it happened only 5 of the 89 hires since 2020, and then one was an FCS deputy AD. And then football schools almost never hire ADs from non-football schools. Makes sense. I think if you saw it happen, it'd be maybe someone from the Big East that had a lot of revenue generation or something, and they really wanted to go all in on basketball. It's only happened 6 of 182 hires in the last 5 years where a football school hired someone directly from a non-football school. And then also, retirements remain a major driver for the departures. 65 ADs retired since January of 2020, 22 of those just since January 2024, and so far in 2025. Now, that is saying retirement. Some more obviously left with other for other reasons or being reassigned. Now, ADs leave for other AD positions 54 times as uh, as going from an Division One AD to another Division One AD role. And then 11 sitting ADs were classified as reassigned internally. And that is, I'm guessing, either to keep them around to train the next person, a show of respect, or just not wanting to really buy out the whole contract, but they stay there and they kind of take one of those advisor to the chancellor or the president positions while the new person starts. And then out of 235 hires since 2020, only 41 were females. That's 17%. 15 of those 41 were internal promotions, which is 37%. Now, as of right now, recording this late at night on Tuesday, July 22nd, there are currently 16 open AD positions. So at the power schools, we have Rutgers, Stanford, and I'm counting UC Berkeley, Cal. They have co-ADs named for 25, 26, and then five for FBS non-power. You got Delaware, who's joining FBS, Marshall, New Mexico State. That one's been a long time. Wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being the interim person that's been there for, over a year now. And then South Florida and Utah State. So of the non-power ones, the ones you think will probably end soon is Marshall and South Florida. Utah State sounds like it's going to be a longer runway for them since they've got Sandy Barber. FCS, there's Bucknell, Cal Poly, Gardner-Webb, South Carolina State, and Southern Utah. And then three at the non-football. You've got Cal State Northridge, New Orleans. That one's been open forever. Wouldn't be surprised if I think their interim has been around a long time, but it'd be interesting. That school has been suffering a lot of financial hardship as an institution too. UC San Diego is the third non-football AD opening. So this does not include North Carolina or Oklahoma. Bubba Cunningham's obviously still there. Joe Castiglione's still there. Bubba's successor's already named, working in the department. Oklahoma, they could be months from actually interviewing people. They just now, I think today, released the search committee. And then I included the Cal's co-ADs, since they're acting for the 25-26, I included this school as well, since we know they're doing a search. 12 of the openings have acting or interim athletic directors. And then obviously at Marshall, Christian Spears is still there until his successor is named as well. Now, I want to kind of it's a lot easier to probably read this. So just for the sake of if you're driving listening to this or you just want to list it in your head, I'm going to read the bulleted list for each of these subdivisions and what I put on here. So we'll start with the FBS Power, the autonomy schools. 48 hires since 2020. 34 came from other power schools. 8 came from other FBS non-power schools. 2 from non-football, and that was at Villanova and Omaha. Omaha was, Trev Alberts going from Omaha, University of Nebraska, Omaha to University of Nebraska, Lincoln, obviously already well known there. So you think about Villanova being the only one, and believe that was recently for Northwestern. 24-25 so far, 19 hires since January 2024. 3 were females, 6 were internal promotions, 12 were sitting ADs, 8 of which were from other power schools. 4 were deputy ADs, all from power schools. 14 total came from power schools. 3 came from other FBS, and then 1 came from FCS. Now let's go to FBS non-power, non-autonomy schools. 41 hires since 2020. 17 came from power schools, including 7 each from the SEC and Big 12. 16 from other FBS non-power schools, meaning, staying at that same level. 5 came from the FCS, 2 from non-football. 10 were sitting ADs, and 18 were deputies. Now, since January 2024, all the way up until now, there's been 16 hires. No females, 2 internal promotions, 5 were sitting athletic directors, 8 were deputy athletic directors, 6 came from other FBS non-power schools, 6 came from power schools, and 3 from FCS. Now let's look at the FCS breakdown for 2020 and then 24-25 so far. So 93 hires since 2020, 46 came from other FCS schools, 14 came from the power level, 13 came from FBS non-autonomy, 16 were current ADs, 31 were deputy ADs, 17 female hires, and then 30 were internal promotions. So that was since 2020. Now let's look closer for the FCS just since January 2024. 26 hires, 5 female, 10 internal promotions, 16 from other FCS schools, 5 from power schools, 3 from other FBS schools, 4 were sitting ADs, 11 were deputy ADs, 5 were senior associate, and then 2 held associate vice president titles to kind of reflect the institutional structure of their titles. You think of that as a mix of deputy or senior associate. Okay, let's look at the same type of information collection. Once again, easier if you read it. Hopefully you can replay this if you're listening or you're watching. So non-football, there's been 53 hires since 2020. 14 were females, 14 were internal promotions, 17 from other AD jobs, 13 came directly from deputy AD roles, and 10 came from the senior associate AD role. Now, just since 2024, there's been 12 hires, 11 were in 2024. So 6 females, 0 internal promotions, 3 were sitting ADs, 6 were deputy ADs, 21 came from fellow non-football schools, 10 came from FCS, 7 came from the power schools, 5 came from other FBS schools, and then 7 actually came from Division II. All right, so now going to look at the conference AD hire since 2020. Okay, and this data reflects at what point in the database. It's always about where they were at the time of the hire. Okay, so Big Ten, 16 AD hires since 2020. Northwestern was 3 of those. ACC, 14 AD hires since 2020. Boston College and Georgia Tech have each made 2 hires. The SWAC, 14. 5 schools have made 2 hires each in the last 5 years. Sun Belt has had 11 hires. Arkansas State has now had 3. The Valley, Missouri Valley, there was 11. Valpo and Illinois State made 2 hires each. The others were all individual schools. The Big West, 11 AD hires. Hawaii made 2 hires. CSU Northridge is looking for their second now. So that's not even included in the 11. That would make 12. The American, 10, and 2 of those are Tulsa. SEC, 9 AD hires, with Missouri being on there twice. Mountain West, 9, and then Utah State's looking for their second now. Other than that, everyone's, I think, just at 1. In the Big 12, 8 across 8 different schools. And then the Big East has had 7 across 7 different schools. So my final takeaways that I think, does it come as a shock? No, but it's interesting to see some data actually fulfilling one of those things. For example, I think data is important because it also, when you can look at the numbers, and I have the names in my database, but I didn't want to put everyone's names out there for everything. And I want it to have some value for higher ed athletics, for selfish purposes. But you would just assume that a lot of people, a lot of sitting ADs have gone voluntarily to do that deputy role. But we talked about it, it's been 13 times. Now, will it grow? Yeah, I think it will, especially the type of money that you can make there, and if that is important to someone, and maybe it's less stress. But there's some other things that the takeaways just helped with. So deputy AD remains the most reliable stepping stone position, especially if you want to become an AD at the FBS or the FBS power schools. Internal promotions are significant if you're an internal on FCS, or a non-football, but not as much reoccurring in FBS and FBS power schools. I think there's always some succession planning or things just work out. I mean, if you think about Clemson and Arizona State, for example, they had really good, capable people on staff to be able to just step into those roles when their openings happen. Females remain very much underrepresented in hires, especially if you took out the non-football hires. Power schools mostly hire from within their own subdivision ranks. So it's not, hey, let's go find a G5 AD. It is, let's find maybe a deputy AD or let's do a sitting AD. So if you want to check this out, or you think I may have made an error on here, I already see a couple typos I have to fix, unfortunately. But go to higheredathletics.com and tell someone about my tracker. I plan on doing more stuff like this. I want to be the resource that can publicly put stuff out there on my website that is actually going to help practitioners and researchers. This hopefully can generate some ideas.